This is 40K Today. 40K news so important, it comes with an inbuilt -12 to your charge range. And it always fights first. Well, hi there, and thanks for downloading this episode of 40K Today. Welcome to the show. This is your daily 15-minute news, views, and interviews show that covers the whole hobby of Warhammer 40,000. It's nice to have you with us. I'm your host, Steve Joel, and today on the program, Demons just had their moment in the Psychic Awakening Sun, and Jim Vesal talks us through what he likes and doesn't like about their bits of the new book. And in just a second, we catch up with a pro painter named Devonian Maher, and we're going to get a tip on highlighting and shading the most notoriously hard to paint colour, yellow. But first, there are just a couple of other things going on that we need to talk about. The next Psychic Awakening book is being previewed on the Warhammer community site. Yeah, while we're all getting amped for the new edition, the Awakening rolls on. So new rules have been previewed for Death Guard. Lots of very cool strats in there, including the ability to hide units of Poxwalkers underground and bring them up. They're scary enough as it is, eh? Stephen Box and Mikey Herbert, both prolific content creators in the UK, continue to wage war online over whether to cut your gaming mats or to find another way to bring the size down to the new minimum. Mikey wants to cut, Stephen wants to cover. So there are so many videos that the two of them have both made full of great ideas. Tomorrow on the show, we are going to get them both on to go head-to-head and put their cases. So make sure you're here for that. Also, if you get a chance, have a look at SN Battle Report's Facebook page. Pardo from SN has put up a beautiful, elegant solution to the problem. It won't be everyone's solution, but it looks great on his table. And while we're on the subject, you know what? We're running a poll on Facebook right now. Are you going to cut your mats down to the new recommended minimum size? 17% say yeah, they will. Which, of course, means 83% are saying no, we're going to leave them just the way they are for now. All right, we'll come back to competitive gaming in a second. Right now, though, we want to head into the hobby room. Devonian Maher is a pro painter who sells out his painting sessions, his coaching sessions at places like Adepticon. The man is a superstar, and we are very lucky to have him as a regular on our show to help out with some painting tips. John Damaris spoke to Devonian about highlighting and shading yellow.
Devonian, my longtime friend, welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about another hobby tip today. What do you have for our listeners?
Well, as usual, I always like to pick the topics where, people are usually a little hesitant. And today I'm going to pick one that people are usually no less hesitant about, and it's going to be about painting the color yellow. I know we've talked about it before, but one of the major things about painting the color yellow, I think, as we may have talked about before, is that you always want to make sure you have a good base in order to put your yellow down. But a lot of people wonder what happens if the color yellow, when they're finished, it starts looking flat. If you have a bunch of Imperial Fists who just look like yellow blobs, what do you do? Well, my quick tip for today is that a lot of people may not be aware, but if you take like an orangish flesh wash, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I think it's Reichland Flesh Shade. If you take a Reichland Flesh Shade or Ogren Flesh, I think it used to be called, if you take that color and you use it, don't wash the entire model, but if you wash just the areas that would be in shadow or should be darker, you're going to find out that the orange that's in the Ogren Flesh shade will actually complement the yellow very well, and it actually darkens it enough while still feeling very natural, a lot more natural than say if you take like a really dark brown or just like a darker yellow, which isn't going to add enough contrast to it.
Okay, so you're saying use actual flesh wash instead of like one of the yellow washes or mixing your own. A lot of people do that, right?
Exactly.
That's really cool. And then what would you do to highlight after you did the wash then? Would you build it back up with more thin coats?
So basically, when you're doing the wash, you don't want to focus the whole thing on doing a wash. So as I said, a lot of people, if people really wanted to hit the entire color with a wash, with the entire area with the wash, it's going to end up making the whole thing look muddier, and they're actually going to have to work harder. So one of the things that I would suggest doing is, as I said, just put the wash in the areas that are going to be darker, and then maybe using a little bit of Flash Gets Yellow, and you can use that to start bringing the color up. And then one of the little tips that I like to use is, as I tell everybody, never use pure white. So if you have a bottle of white Scar, you might as well not even try and use it, because it's going to make the yellow look very dull. So using a color such as elf flesh, which I know sounds weird, if you use elf flesh and mix that into your Flash Gets Yellow, you're going to get a much brighter highlight for your yellows, and you should use that to actually do a lot of your lining.
That's really cool. So you're saying that obviously people should experiment with yellow, right? And maybe not be intimidated by it.
Right.
Is there any other tips that you would add when painting yellow? So we talked about the wash, right? And then we talked about some of the highlights. Let's go a little deeper. Like what's another pro tip that you would give somebody if they were going to approach yellow for the first time?
If you're going to use yellow, definitely a good idea is, if you're going to, I always suggest to zenith prime your models. And a lot of people will prime their models pure black and then go over it and try and do yellow, which anybody who's tried to do that knows it's an absolute nightmare. So my suggestion always is to take something like some of the stronger colors. So what I like to do is I like to take something like, let's say, Zameri Desert, or like a light ochre, like Tau light ochre. And basically I like to use colors like that because they have more coverage. And they're not as like bright yellow. So taking something like, let's say, Tau light ochre and mixing it with a little bit of maybe Talaran sand or Rhinox hide. What it's going to do is, you don't want to use a lot of the brown color in it. You want it mainly the yellow. But by mixing those two colors together, you're going to give yourself a thicker base. And then that way, when you're trying to paint it over the black areas, it has enough staying power to actually give you good coverage so that you can move up to the other tips.
Thanks again, Devonian, for stopping by. I think those are some great tips for bringing out the best yellows that you can. And hopefully, if people want to find you, I'll definitely put a link in the show notes to find your Twitch channel for more information.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, as I said, anytime they want to come to the channel, if they have more questions about some of the quick tips that I give during the show, they're more than welcome, as you said, to check out my Twitch channel. I do take time out of every session to go over questions, tips, and tricks that people have. And I actually do have a feedback section where I actually will look at people's models and give them a little of my comments, my criticism, and then try and tell them what I think they could do if they have questions about how to succeed.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was John Damaris speaking with Devonian Maher. Make sure you check out his Twitch channel for more great painting. The man is a genius. He's at Cutthroat Cure, which is all one word. And that covers every platform. We've put the link to his Instagram in our show notes, and you can find your way around to everything else from there. Next up, Top Demons player Jim Vesal stops by to give us his highs and lows of the new Psychic Awakening book.
Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org.
Welcome back. So, AdMech with a big win out of the new Psychic Awakening book. They've done amazingly. How did other factions fare? Jim Vesal is famously one of the most successful Chaos players, and especially Demons players, in the world over the past few years. Paul Murphy spoke to Jim and asked him what Demons got out of this new book.
Hey, Jim, Chaos Master. I'm joined tonight by Jim Vesal. How's it going?
Good, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
You actually wrecking shop with demons. I mean, you could wreck shop with any army, but you're especially known for being an innovator on the chaos side.
Yeah, my one true and first love and forever love will always be my number one, even if I sometimes go astray.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's fine. We can dabble in other things. But Ancient War and the Psychic Awakening is bringing some things to demons, and I'd like to hear what you think about it, and I guess let me know your thoughts. How does it compare to some of the other things we've seen?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we've seen so far is pretty interesting. I think it's from what it sounds like. We've seen the table of contents on the GW site, so it does look like they're going to have new rules for all the greater demons. Looks like there's a few pages of stratagems and some additional things like that. So, I think obviously the biggest thing that demons need right now is a reason for us to take things that aren't like the core troops. I think a lot of times when you see demons in a list, whether it's chaos, in a Thousand Suns maybe mixed list, or Chaos Space Marines, is you got some really great characters in the army, and and then you got usually troops like Bloodletters or Horrors or Plague Bearers. Those are usually kind of rounding it out. And they're very good at or Nurglings, which are kind of MVP units. So I really hope the book gives us some good reasons to take some of the other things, those elites, fast attacks, the things that you just almost never see on the table. So that's something that I'm really hoping for. The other thing is I'm excited to be able to play, hopefully, with my greater demons. I know those are also a unit that, they're definitely not bad units. They're not like, they're not S tier or A tier when it comes to like things that I want. But, in certain lists, in certain situations, the greater demons can add a lot to list. And so I'm really hoping the rules for the Exalteds add, just another little bit to take them over the top, where we start seeing them more. What I've seen so far is pretty promising. Obviously, anytime you get free rules for a unit just to make it better, it's always a good thing. So, fingers crossed that we start to see some of that stuff.
What do you think about the Great Unclean One getting seemingly faster?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's definitely an interesting rule. I think the thing with the Great Unclean One is, like, when I think about like the role of a Great Unclean on my list, it's not like the first thing in front of everyone running through. Like, I definitely feel like it's a bit more of a slow and steady march with the rest of the army. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the nice thing for that is that it works off a deep strike. So you could deep strike your Great Unclean One, and then only needing like an 8 to roll out of deep strike. I think that could be a really fun use for it versus a 9. So maybe you're going to put that Great Unclean One in deep strike, which will help them survive a bit more. And I think, so I think that's like a really, really good use for it. The Spell Thief list also for Tzeentch is really devastating, especially with all the Grey Knights we're seeing, being able to basically steal psychic spells and prevent your enemy from casting them. Yeah. I think that can be really devastating.
People have mentioned that they don't think that that's really good. And how could it not be good?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, a Lord of Change gets +2 to cast normally. So, sorry, +2 to cast and deny. So all of a sudden, if you put him in a position where he's going to be able to take up a large part of the board, remember, denies a 24-inch bubble. So say you put him in any 1/3 section of the board, he's basically got a 48-inch kind of aura, 48-inch from edge to edge of his base to deny stuff. And so even if, as you mentioned, some people can kind of move their models away, that does, anytime you are able to force your opponent to move in a way that you want versus the way that they want, that's going to be really powerful. And, from what we're hearing with 9th edition, it sounds like monsters are going to get a bit of an upgrade with how they interact. It also sounds like some of the terrain rules might be a bit more favorable for blocking line of sight and getting those monsters there alive. So, there could be situations where that Lord of Change is able to maybe sit in the middle of the table behind a piece of terrain that he's able to hide behind, that, maybe in current edition he normally wouldn't have been able to. And from behind that is able to basically deny half the board and or at least threaten half the board with this spell power. And if you're Eldar and you lose a thing like Guide or Quicken, or if you're Grey Knights and you lose something like Astral Aim, that's pretty devastating. Like, to lose some of those spells, even losing a Smite on your Grey Knight squads, that's pretty good. Like, if I was able to stop my opponent from casting Smite on a bunch of his Grey Knight squads, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool ability.
Yeah, I think that a lot of armies, when they take a Psyker, they'll have the one power that they need to kind of be their gas in the engine on one Psyker. And
yeah,
they don't have the points to take another as a backup redundant of the same power.
Yeah, and besides Grey Knights and Eldar, most of the other armies only have, they're not super psychic heavy. So being able to maybe kill a jump out of an Orc army, or being able to remove some of those the additional saves out of a Guard army. So there is armies where losing that one or very strong power, or you only really need to go off once. There's definitely armies where that rely on maybe one power. Like think about playing a mirror match, and all of a sudden you take away the warp time on the opposing chaos player. Then it's like, oh wow, now my possess bomb can't all of a sudden move across the table. And I've changed how that that list plays for the rest of the game. So it's going to be really interesting. And the thing with something like that is the wording, which it says they lose it and cannot attempt to manifest it again in this battle. So say you're playing chaos, they can't use then a spell familiar to get it back again. They can't switch out their spell for it because they can no longer manifest it the battle, even if they get the spell again through a spell familiar.
That is pretty exciting.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. From what you've read so far, is there anything that's made you really excited to take on the table that maybe you hadn't been considering before?
Yeah, I have a Lord of Change. I painted it. It was probably the first big model I painted. I spent probably 60, 70 hours on it. It's probably one of the best painted models I've ever painted. Most amount of time I put on a model. I painted every little feather on each of the little, on the feathers. I painted each little tiny stroke of the feathers, so you can actually see the individual hairs on the feather or whatever they're called. And it's something that has gathered dust. I used it once right at the start of 8th edition, back when Index was still with Index, and I've never played with it again. And so I'm really excited to be able to pull it out kind of from the dustbin and play with it again. And now I also have an excuse potentially to get some of the other ones. I've always wanted to paint one of each Greater Demon, but never really had a good excuse. So I'm excited to maybe potentially pick up the other three and give those a whirl and get a full collection of Greater Demons. I think that'd be really fun.
Man, heck yeah. Jim, thanks for checking in with us. We'll talk again soon.
No worries. Thanks, Paul.
That's Paul Murphy speaking with Jim Vesal. We've put a link to Jim's Instagram in our Facebook. Not only is he a great player, he's also a great painter. He's at Jim Bov Paints. As I say, the link in the show notes. Okay, folks, it is time to get pumped for the model of the day.
It's the model of the day, the model of the day, the model of the day.
Today's model is by Ziad on Instagram. His Chaos Knight, painted in plague green, looks to be stomping a loyalist knight into the ground. And he's still holding a piece of ripped-off arm from the other knight in his huge claws. This beast has bones sticking out of its shoulders, and it's big and it's beautiful. The highlighting is brilliantly clean, and the pose is so cool. It looks like he's done with that knight now. He's killed it, and he's coming for you. So we have included a link in our show notes. You'll be able to see it on our Instagram and Facebook pages as well. Pictures of this gorgeous model. It's our model of the day. And if you have a model that you would like us to feature on the show, or if you've seen a model you think should feature on the show, let us know. The other way to do it is if you post it to your Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, if you hashtag it 40K today with the number 2 in it, hashtag 40K number 2 DAY, we'll see it. We're collecting all those, and we're going to feature those as models of the day over the next little while. So just post your model wherever you normally would, hashtag 40K today, and we'll see it. And that's it. Thanks for joining us. A big thank you to our content producer, Alex Bainter, our social media ace, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan. And if you have anything you think we should feature on the show, model of the day or otherwise, maybe it's your own YouTube channel, maybe you're doing battle reports, or you've got a great hobby tip, get in touch. We'd love to have you on the program. Make sure you join us tomorrow as well, when we've got Stephen Box from Vanguard Tactics and Mikey Herbert from Hellstorm Wargaming. They're going head-to-head. They're going to fight it out on the subject of cutting your gaming mats down to size. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, for the 40K Today team, I'm Steve Joel, and that's what's happening in 40K Today.